All right. I rounded up Wes Cowan. He didn't know. Wes made the mistake of coming to visit Tucson, right? Oh, I'm going to take a week off. No, you're going right into the podcast booth.
Well, listen, it's not the first time I've been here and not the first time I've done this. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, that's true. I mean, you've done a lot of television. You know?
I have, yes.
Yeah. I mean, go to the History Detectives, right? You're on that.
11 years there.
11 years there. You've been on
23 years on the Antique. 23 years on the Antiques Road. 22. We're a couple of years among friends. Who cares?
23 years.
Long time.
And you opened in 1994, was it?
About 94, yeah.
Right, how about that? See, I do my research, Wes.
Very good. Well, I've probably known you for most of that time.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time.
We have.
And so, but what I don't know is I don't know all the details about Wes Cowan. And the details I'm just curious is, where'd you grow up, Wes? I know you live in Cincinnati and you have a great auction house there and other places as well, which we'll get into. But where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up I was born in Flushing, New York, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. My mother and father divorced. My mother, when I was 3 years old, my mother moved back home to Kentucky, where she was from.
That's where that is. Okay.
And I spent most of my life in Louisville, Kentucky, but also, and this is an important factor in my life, my grandparents and all my mother's relatives were farmers down in Western Kentucky, or many of them were farmers. And so I would spend most of my summers working on the farm in Western Kentucky.
So what would you do? What kind of things?
Oh, rake hay and, do anything they wanted me to do. Put hay up in a barn and, just whatever I could do to make a buck.
And so did they plow and do things like that?
Oh, yeah.
Too? So you must have found Indian artifacts or seen things like that as you were a kid growing up, right?
Of course. I like to tell people I never made it past the A's in the career alphabet. I wanted to be a veterinarian first because I always loved animals. Yeah. And then a neighbor of mine, when I was about 10 years old or so, gave me an arrowhead, this chipstone arrowhead. I looked at it in my hand and I said, man, that's the coolest thing that I've ever seen. And it just sort of sparked all this,
it's hundreds and hundreds or thousands of years old.
Questions that you had. Who made this? And so I grew up changing from being a veterinarian to a archaeologist. And growing up in Western Kentucky, spending the time in Western Kentucky on farms, I had plenty of opportunities to find arrowheads and continue that.
And did you go do that? Would you go and look and search?
Oh, yeah. No.
As much.
No, I mean, I would, when I was a kid, I would walk everywhere. And then when I got a driver's license, boy, that just opened up a whole new world for me. And, by the time I was in high school, I was pretty committed to being an archaeologist. Wow. And I actually, when I was 15, I wrote the University of Kentucky Museum of Anthropology because I'd seen an article in the Sunday newspaper about this team of archaeologists from the University of Kentucky working in the Grand Canyon. And I thought, man, that's great. So I wrote him a letter and I said, look, I've been a collector of Indian artifacts all my life, and I've been, digging here and there. And of course, that was the, big no-no. But when you're that young, you don't know. So, and I said in the letter, I said, I saw the article about working the Grand Canyon. I would just love to work on a dig. Do you have any opportunities? And, of course, thinking I'd never hear anything back. And about 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the director of the Museum of Anthropology. And they said, well, we have an excavation going on in Kentucky right now, and we need somebody to work on this excavation. And by the way, we'll pay you. So, man, I was like in heaven. So by the time I graduated from high school, I knew that I was going to be an archaeologist and got a BA and MA from the University of Kentucky, and then got a PhD from the University of Michigan.
So I'm going to back you up on that because I want to find out. There's a lot of space in between.
Yeah, there is.
I want to go back to when you go and do this dig.
Yeah.
You're only 15, right? And that was a pivotal point in your life, would you say?
Well, I think it was, because I learned that what I was doing as a kid, going around and digging in these places, that's not something that I should have been doing. And B, I got introduced to archaeology as a real academic discipline. Mm-hmm. And I guess C, I found out I could get paid for doing it, and I was the youngest kid on this dig, all
Was
these
it mainly graduate
Oh
students
yeah,
and that
all
kind of
these
stuff?
graduate students. So I, learned how to drink beer and do all kinds of stuff that, I'm sure I shouldn't have been doing when I was 15. But
Yeah.
it was a very pivotal point for me, and it was. But more than that, by the time I entered the University of Kentucky as a freshman, I mean, I knew the faculty, some of the faculty there. I knew some of these graduate students that
Yes.
were still sort of almost matriculating. And when I was a freshman, a guy there who was sort of an hourly employee of the museum was graduating in January and mid-year and entering the Peace Corps. So I got his job. And I had that job at the Museum of Anthropology for 4 years as an undergrad. And I was doing, all kinds of stuff for the museum. I was, going over to the med school and picking up cadaver parts for the physical anthropology class. And I was making sure that the university trucks got their oil changed and showing graduate students and visiting scholars the collections. And so I was really hooked in. I was really tied in with the museum.
And you had a key so you could go look at the collections at any time you wanted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It
I'm
was
sure you did
fabulous.
do that too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so was your mom, what was her thought about you becoming an archaeologist? Because I'm sure that's all you talked about.
Well, I think like most parents, she was thrilled for me because she knew that this was something I really was interested in. I was not a very good student in high school, and I think she was worried that I was going to be pumping gas. And, and so I found something that I really liked, and I really put my mind to working on it by the time I was a junior in high school or junior in college. And so she was thrilled. At the same time, like most parents of academicians, particularly, people that don't understand, what archaeologists do. And I mean, she was supportive, but as long as I was happy, that was great. But I don't think she ever really understood exactly what I was doing.
What did she do?
She was a remedial reading teacher.
So you got some of that whether you wanted it or not.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It probably came in handy later on.
She was very dedicated to her children.
That's fantastic. And so did you have other brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister who is retired now. She was a theologian at Candler School in Atlanta. She has a PhD from Oxford. My brother is a retired lawyer and judge. He has a degree from Harvard. So Mom did pretty good for a single parent growing up in the 1950s. I was the baby.
Oh, you were the baby.
I was the baby.
Yeah. So you had some footsteps you had to fill, some big ones.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Makes
I was
it tough.
always looking up to my brother and sister. Yeah.
And he went to Harvard.
Yep.
And he got his degree in law.
He was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And then he was the attorney general for the state of Kentucky. And then he was a judge for 15 or 20 years.
And is he retired now?
He's retired.
Wow, okay.
Plays a lot of golf. Tries to get me to play, and I say, not for me.
Oh, yeah, don't do it. He'll be hooked, I guarantee you. So now when you graduate high school, this is what, 68 or so?
69.
69. So that's the height of the Vietnam War, too.
Oh, yeah.
So how was that? Did that affect you at all? Because your friends are going off. Now you're going to college, so you'll get a deferment.
Well, I got a deferment, but I was also in the first draft. I was in the first draft lottery.
Oh, yeah. What was your lottery number?
It was right on the cusp of being drafted. I think it was 139, maybe something like that. But I can remember I was in archaeological field school at the University of Missouri, and I was on this big ridgetop overlooking the Missouri River, and I was off by myself in an excavation unit that they had said, go over and dig this test pit over in this place.
Right.
And I had a portable radio right on the side of the excavation unit. I was listening to the numbers being called and sweating bullets.
Oh, yeah.
Because I really didn't know what I was going to do.
Right. Nobody did.
Nobody
did.
You just didn't know.
Your whole life is sitting there being picked out of a jar.
Exactly.
And so you got kind of a mid number. And what did you do when you got that? What did you think?
Well, I wasn't going to get drafted, so I was just like, "Wow, I'm not going to get drafted, and I can at least finish up my graduate career, undergraduate career, and think about graduate school."
And so when you were doing that draw. Were you already in college at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would have been between my freshman and sophomore years.
Okay. I got it. All right.
1970, something like that.
Yeah. So you were at the sweet zone because by the time you finished, the war was over in 72, basically.
Yeah.
So you finished in 72 at the University of Kentucky.
No, I finished in 72.
or 73 maybe.
73, yeah. And then I entered graduate school there.
And so where did you go there? Where was graduate school?
I went to the University of Kentucky for my MA because I had, as an undergraduate, there was this place in eastern Kentucky, sort of at the boundary of the bluegrass and the mountains of Kentucky. That was this big escarpment that had pushed up during the in the Pennsylvania era, and there were these huge runs of cliffs that if you didn't have trees there, it would be like cliffs out here in the Southwest. And in fact, the area that I started going to and really began to gravitate to was an area that has more natural arches than Arches National Monument.
Oh, wow.
And so this place, which is called the Red River Gorge, the Corps of Engineers, of course, in their infinite wisdom, decided they need to build a dam there.
Of course.
So when that decision was made, federal laws kicked in that they had to do an environmental impact statement. Archaeology was part of that. And because I had been tapped into a bunch of amateurs who were working in this area, I was chosen between my senior and first year of graduate school to go work and do an archaeological survey in this Red River Gorge area. And it was like a dream come true for me. But when I did that, this was an area, as I'm sure you're familiar with out here in the Southwest, there are these microclimates that are created under these cliffs where it doesn't rain and it's just dry perpetually. And so when people brought things and camped under these overhangs thousands of years ago, they became preserved.
Yes.
And I did my master's thesis on an archaeological site that was full of preserved textiles and vegetal materials. And I became really fascinated with all this plant material that you normally wouldn't see in the deciduous East, where it's wet and, you just don't see it because it decays. Here were these things that were 1,500, 2,000 years old that were like yesterday.
And would those be in caches of
No,
caves,
they were just in the midden, in the just camp debris.
Yeah.
And
but it wasn't getting rained on and things.
Wasn't getting rained on. And excuse me, there were some particularly there was lots of food remains, plant food remains.
That's amazing.
And I became very fascinated with this. And so about the time that I came back from the first or second year working in Red River Gorge, I decided I was going to be a paleoethnobotanist, someone who looks at the interactions between past human and plant populations.
Yeah, actually, my mom was a botanist.
And so you get it. So as part of this sort of package were all these seeds from plants that, as it turns out, we subsequently learned, had been domesticated by people in the eastern woodlands. And the peoples over the millennia had manipulated these plants so much that their gene pool had changed and seed sizes increased. And, here are all these plants that are extinct today, but 3,000 years ago, these people, these
that's what they lived on.
They were sort of incipient horticulturalists. Yeah. These were a suite of crops that was virtually swept away when corn was introduced to eastern North America about 1000 AD.
Yeah,
but before then, there were these 4 or 5 plants that people were using on a daily basis.
What were those kind of plants?
Well, there was a plant called goosefoot, which is a weed, pig's foot or goosefoot.
And it's extinct now.
Well, yes,
that species.
That species is still around, but the variety that was domesticated is extinct.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Another plant called marsh elder or sumpweed, which is
I've heard of sumpweed.
A plant that grows in the low places in the Mississippi Valley. They went from a little seed, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters long, to almost 10 millimeters long. I mean, they like the size of a sunflower seed. Sunflower was another one. The other thing that we discovered was that squashes that we were finding, contrary to popular scientific belief at the time, that were not introduced from Mexico. These squashes were domesticated in eastern North America.
To there. Yeah.
And working with a friend of mine from the Smithsonian, we discovered the wild progenitor of all the summer squashes that are, grown today, like crookneck squash and
have any of
zucchini.
The big companies tried to get that information as far as?
No, I mean, it's all available in the literature.
Wonder, right?
Yeah. Well, I've often thought about, we probably ought to re-domesticate.
I wrote a whole book about this on the butterfly twins. So it'd be it seems like there's a whole cachet.
I better read that one.
Yeah, you might want to read that one. I should have talked to you first before I wrote it, probably. I didn't know you were a paleobotanist interested.
Paleoethnobotanist.
Ethnobotanist, sorry, yes, because you have to have the ethnicity part of the thing. And so did you ever write a paper on any of that?
I wrote my master's and my dissertation
and your
on
dissertation.
It. Yeah.
And what is the dissertation? What was the title of the dissertation?
The dissertation was... From Foraging to Farming, Incipient Horticulture on the Cumberland Plateau of Kentucky.
Oh, wow. And where are all those seeds and plant material? And
they're all at the University of Kentucky now.
Oh, and so they own it, basically.
Well, the United States government owns it because it was on Forest Service land.
I see. And they did end up completely washing out that valley with water?
No, it was never built.
Was it because of what you found?
Partly, yeah. I ended up testifying in federal court when a lawsuit challenged the dam, and so I would guess that my testimony was partially helpful in keeping the dam.
Because you said this is important stuff that we didn't know about by the squashes and all the progenitor of all the squashes.
Exactly.
See, I'm learning. This is what I like about this show. These are the things if we just skipped over from high school to PhD, we don't get to find out all these interesting things. So you did your PhD in that field, paleoethnic botany.
Paleoethnobotany. But it was part, I have a degree in anthropology.
Yes.
And
do you consider yourself an anthropologist or an archaeologist?
Well, in the United States, anthropology subsumes ethnology, archaeology, physical anthropology, and some people would say linguistics. So there are 4 subdisciplines of anthropology.
Yeah, so all archaeologists are anthropologists, but not all anthropologists are archaeologists.
That's correct. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And in Europe, it's very different. Archaeologists do not come from the same anthropological tradition that we do, which is basically anthropology grew out of a study of American Indians around the turn of the century here. And so, we anthropologists here always look to the American Indian populations as, these are the people who were here first. Whereas in Europe, if you're an archaeologist, you look at the classics. So, you can get a degree in archaeology that has nothing to do with anthropology in Europe, but not here.
Yeah, I got it. I see it. Interesting. More tid facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very good. Now, so when you finish your PhD and you have the degree in anthropology with interest in archaeology, specialists, I guess, in archaeology, what did you do then?
Well, believe it or not,
because those are hard to find jobs. Actually.
And at the time, I went to a really good school. University of Michigan was the number one school, number one anthropology department in the country then, and it still is ranked very highly. So I actually had more job choices than I thought I might. My first job interview was at Iowa State University, and they offered me a job, and my wife said, "I will not live in a vowel state." I said, "What do you mean you won't live in a vowel state?" She said, "I won't live in Iowa, Illinois."
If it starts with that's funny.
So
because Ohio does.
So I turned the job down, came back and was offered the job and turned it down. And my dissertation committee saying, "Are you out of your mind?"
Right.
So the next job opportunity I had offer was at Ohio State University, and I took the job. So I taught at Ohio State for 3 years. Mm-hmm. My wife, in the meantime, was in advertising. She was a producer for a major advertising agency in Detroit. We moved to Columbus. There was no advertising business in Columbus in 1980 or whenever we moved there. And in the meantime, her agency wooed her back with promises of big money and big jobs. And she went back
to Detroit.
Lived in suburban Detroit for about a year and a half, and we did this commuter marriage thing, and we just said, this is not going to work.
No, it's
not going to work. So I left my job, moved back to Michigan, and I guess we should back up a little bit, because when I was in graduate school at the University of Michigan, I had had reverted to the habits of what I'd done as a kid growing up in Louisville. I grew up in Louisville in an area that was full of antique shops, and I was going to antique shops as a kid.
This is rather important component of it. Thank you.
As many graduate students do when they're looking for an excuse not to write their dissertation, they do something else. So I started going to antique shops in southeastern Michigan and discovered photography. I discovered going to an antique shop, and here's a basket of photos, and there'd be a picture of a Civil War soldier or an Indian or some town scene.
And this is when you're in graduate school?
Yeah, when I was in graduate school.
But you had a love of it before?
Not photography. I liked antiques. I liked anything that was old.
And when did that happen?
When I was like 9 or 10 years old.
And when did you buy your first antique? Do you remember?
Very early. I was buying, 12.
Yeah.
I was riding my bike to antique shops. And
was it to collect, or did you already start selling it at that point?
No, I was not buying and selling then. I was collecting, and of course didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But
and what did you buy?
All these old antique dealers thought it was so cute that some kid was coming. I was buying originally hand-painted German china.
Yeah. What was it about that? Do you know?
I don't know. It's just
availability,
pretty.
maybe?
My mother liked that kind of stuff, and I thought, well, if she likes it, it can't be all bad.
Right.
And there was a lot of it, and I could buy it for a couple bucks. And
so every time one of those comes to your auction house,
I throw it against the wall and break it. No, I got rid of that a long time ago. But back to the photography angle. For some reason, I was drawn to these photographs because they just transported you back.
History.
And I walked out of an antique shop one day, and there had been a couple guys in the shop sort of eyeballing me, and I bought a photograph. I think it was a post-mortem photograph, or an autopsy photograph, around the turn of the century, medical school autopsy.
Right.
Students standing around a dissected cadaver. So, I think I'd paid $5 for it. So I walked out of the shop, and these two guys follow me out, and one of them comes up to me and says, "Are you interested in selling that?" And I said,
I just bought it.
I hadn't even thought about it. And he said, "Well, I'll give you $50 for it." And I just paid like $5.
Yes.
I said, "Sold."
Huh?
So at that point, I said to myself, you know what? There's a way to supplement my income by doing this.
Yeah.
So by the time I moved to Columbus, Ohio, and took my first job at Ohio State, I had this sort of on the side buying and selling.
You're 26 or so, 28?
Yeah, no, I was 28, something like that. And I just kept doing that. Yeah, mainly all photography.
And any specific kind of photography you were honing into?
No, I was, I was interested in real photo postcards at the time, and I was interested in carte de visite, which are little 2x3 sort of baseball size photos that were popular in the 1860s and 1870s. And if there was some other big paper, I would buy it. But I mean, anything. But curiously, there was one genre that I really just sort of avoided that was to play a pretty large part of my life for a while, and that was stereo view cards. I mean, I'd see them and I didn't pay any attention to them until one day some guy said, "Have you ever looked at one of those things through one of the viewer?" I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, here." So, when you're talking about being drawn into a photograph, there's nothing like being drawn into a three-dimensional photograph from the 1870s. Yeah. So let's flash forward. My wife is in Detroit. I'm in Columbus. We see that this is not going to be good. So I resigned my job. I moved back to Michigan for a year. And for a year, I did nothing but buy and sell photographs. Went all over the state.
When you left your professorship,
yes.
Did you know you were going to do that, or did you just kind of fall into it? Because I guess you had some kind of a plan.
Well, yeah. I mean, I sort of thought, well, why not? Let's try it out. Right. I mean, she had the idea was that I will resign my job, and if we can both find a place where we're comfortable working, then I'll apply there and we'll move.
Right.
So we were in southeastern Michigan for a year. I sold photographs for a year, did really well.
Better than as a professor?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. My first job at teaching was $17,000 a year. And I think I made $27,000 the first year I was selling photos.
So quite a bit.
Yeah, it was quite a bit.
And you're having fun.
And I was having fun. So, but I did not at that point see it as a long-term career alternative.
Probably your wife didn't either.
So, a job came up at Ohio State University, or at, a job became open at the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History. My wife, Shelley, was in advertising. Procter & Gamble was the biggest spender for advertising in the world. And we said, let's move to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So moved to Cincinnati. I was the curator of archaeology there at the Museum of Natural History for 11 years. Had a great time, loved my job, could do any kind of research that I wanted to do. I was, honing in, sort of continuing on the agriculture theme in my professional career. I worked with did excavations at a number of maize agricultural community sites there over the 11 years and loved my job.
Still buying and selling?
Still buying and selling on the side.
And photography still?
Photography was it. But, now I was meeting other people and, manuscripts and,
Were you going to any of the photo shows?
Oh, yeah.
Any of those paper shows?
Yeah.
Were you setting up and doing those too?
Did those.
Yep.
Did those.
What was your biggest first big hit? Do you remember? Did you ever get one of those? Oh my God.
Yeah, I did. I remember there was a nearby monthly flea market across the river from Cincinnati in Kentucky. And I would always go with my flashlight at, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And so I'm at 5 o'clock in the morning, one of the shows, and I flash the light on a table. And here's a photograph of the Cincinnati Suspension Bridge. The Cincinnati Suspension Bridge is the prototype for the Brooklyn Bridge, built by Roebling.
So that's early.
And this was like a beautiful, like framed under glass, beautiful, beautiful picture.
Like 1870, late
67.
Yeah. Okay.
67
so,
by a Cincinnati photographer. And it was like an immaculate, brand new photograph from 67, which by that time I knew you just don't see them in that kind of condition.
This is 1867 for those folks who are listening.
So I asked the dealer, "You have any more?" And he said, "Yeah, I've got a whole box full of photographs back here, but I don't want to put them out because they're not under glass, and I don't want to get the dew on them." So I went to the back of his van and sat down on the tailgate of his van and opened this box up, and my mouth dropped down to my feet because here is this amazing group of photographs that's documenting the enlargement of the lock and dam at the Falls of the Ohio at Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up as a kid. I mean, I'd seen these pictures before, but I'd never seen them in the flesh.
Yeah.
And these pictures were just like the ones that the Cincinnati Bridge, they were immaculate. So it turns out the guy that he had bought these from, their family they were descendants of the engineer who was in charge.
Yep.
So I said, what do you want for them all? And we made a deal, and I went home, and I literally called my mother and said, "Hey, Mom, I need to borrow $800 because I didn't have $800 in the bank." So she said, "Okay," and borrowed the $800 and ended up selling them for a considerable amount of money.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was, mid-30s, I guess.
Yeah, so you were full into doing your professorship, and you've been doing that for a while.
Well, I was a curator, museum curator.
Yeah, curator. But you were doing other things. You were doing research as well.
Oh, yeah. No. I was...
You were doing it all.
I was writing, I was...
What'd your wife think when you made so much money and you did something like that? Did she at any point go, maybe you should consider this?
No.
Nope, she didn't.
No, she knew. Listen, I left... I had a very good run as an academic, and I left right after I had edited, a book that the Smithsonian published on the origins of agriculture, and a co-editor of another book that the Smithsonian published. So it was not like that, I was a failure in my academic career.
No, clearly not.
And, but it just, I think that she was very supportive because she saw that, I was happy in this other career, but there was this other thing too.
And really loved that you would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning with a flashlight to go and looking in.
So I know you're going to say, well, how did you become an auctioneer? Well, that's part of the story too.
Well, that's a ways to go, I think.
One day I'm sitting in my office at the museum. The phone rings. My sister-in-law calls from Louisville, who was an attorney in Louisville. And she said, "Hey, you know something about 19th century photography, right?" And I said, "Yeah, a little bit. I do." She said, "Well, we've got a problem. We have a large estate here in Louisville that has a big collection of 19th century photography." And I said, "Oh, really? Well, that has to be so-and-so's collection." There was some silence. She said, "Well, how did you know that?" And I said, "Well, there was only one guy in Louisville that everybody knew collected this stuff." Right. "Well, he died. We needed to have it appraised for the estate. Can you do that?" So I said, sure. So I came down, which coincided, by the way, with my mother recuperating from open heart surgery. So I was down there for a week taking care of her while I had her table spread with photography. And it was great.
That came from your sister.
Came from my sister. So my sister-in-law. So I appraised this collection of photography. Then the law office, the head lawyer at the office calls me and says, well, thanks for the appraisal.
What do we do with it?
What do we do? Do you want to buy it? And I said, well, I don't really think you want me to appraise it and then to buy it.
Right.
But, I'll tell you what, how about you let me auction it? He said, well, there's only one heir. She's in California. It's not very much money. Let me check and see. So he called a couple of days later and he said, yeah, she said she's fine with that. When can you do it? And I said, well, there's only one problem. I don't have an auctioneer's license. Well, how long is that going to take? I said, well, I don't know. Let me check and see. So,
and you never thought about this before?
Well, I'd been doing mail and phone bid auctions of stereo views for a couple years, where I type up a list, send them out to 150 people, and the auction closes at midnight, and you can call in and leave a bid and mail in a bid. So I'd been doing those, but not live auctions.
And it all had to be done because there's no internet. They had to call you, or they had to actually send a post.
Exactly.
Thing, and then the highest one won.
Yeah. And, and there was always the 5-minute rule. So the auction officially closes at 12. But if you get a call within 5 minutes of closing, the auction could go until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which is it did. So at any rate, I said, well, let me see what I can find out about selling this collection. At auction, there was a local guy who was an auctioneer. I said, I'm going to do all the work. Can you do the auctioning while I sort of work on getting an apprentice license? He said, sure. We did an auction where I was basically his apprentice, but I did all the work, did all the cataloging, photography, everything.
Right.
And the sale was about an $80,000 sale, which was like twice as much as what I'd appraised the collection for. And I hit it right at the time that the daguerreotypes, ambrotype, tintypes were starting on this upward swing.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so it was like, I hit a home run right off the bat.
Right.
And
this other guy was like, wow, thank you.
And it also coincided with the time when a couple guys who were in the business, same sort of photography ephemera business, were retiring. Well, one died. You might even remember Brian Reba. Remember him?
Yep.
Reba Auctions. He died. And another guy in Denmark, Maine, a guy named Chuck Guarino.
Don't know that one.
He would put out a catalog where he'd have rugs and photographs and maps. And he retired. So there was a void in the market right when I hit this sale. So I can remember after I had this sale, I said, well, there's a void now. Why don't I do another one 6 months from now? So I called up a bunch of the, guys that I knew,
dealers,
ephemeral guys, dealers, said, hey, I'm going to have an auction. Do you want to put some stuff in? So they said, yeah. So 6 months later, I had another auction. I'm still working as a curator now. And it was great. I don't know, we made $90,000. I don't know what it was, but I'd come home every day from work and there'd be 3 voicemails. When are you going to have your next auction? So I said, well, maybe I'll do another auction. So 6 months later, I had another auction.
Do you have your license yet?
I had my license at this point. And at that point, I could see the handwriting on the wall. I was having so much fun, and I was getting inundated with stuff to sell. People were sending me stuff from all over the country.
And you're getting to see cool stuff,
and
too.
I'm getting to see and handle all this amazing stuff. And so it came down to the point where, look, I felt like I'd been an archaeologist since I was a kid. I'd had a great academic run. In the great book of life, why not do something else? Something you're very familiar with.
No, I do know that.
So I resigned my job in, I guess, 95.
95, okay.
And away I went. Never looked back.
Let's see. Let me see if I can do the math. How old were you?
Well, it's almost 24 years this spring, I think. 25 maybe.
So how old were you when you opened your thing?
Mid-40s.
You're born in 51?
51.
Yeah, see. Yeah.
43, something like that, right. 44.
So it's time for a new chapter.
Totally.
And so and you said, how did you come up with the name? Did you think about that?
My first name was, yes. My first name for my business was C. Wesley Cowan Historic Americana. Okay. Big mouthful.
Yeah.
Then after a few years, I said, this is ridiculous. I became very cognizant of thinking about, okay, what's the brand?
Yes. And I bet your wife, who is a marketing person, might have said some things too.
Well, I can't remember. She probably did, but I mean, the logical one was Cowan's.
Yeah. It's easy, quick.
For a while, it was Cowan's Historic Americana.
Yeah.
Because then I was just selling historical stuff. Focus. And then it became Cowan's when I started selling decorative arts and more stuff.
And when was that? Would it become Cowan's?
Well, I'd been
10 years in?
Maybe 5.
Yeah,
something
okay,
like
you
that.
figured it out pretty
I
quickly.
remembered, people would call me and say, "Do you sell paintings? Do you sell silver? Do you sell?" And I said, "No, I don't sell that." And I just refer it to another auctioneer. Right. And I got a call one day from the daughter of the former curator of decorative arts at the Cincinnati Art Museum, who had died. And she said, "My mom has 2 houses full of stuff." And I said, "Why not go and look?"
Yeah, why not?
And so I went and looked, and I said, "Man, this is pretty cool too." And so at that point, I already had a couple of employees that were doing the historical stuff. And I said, "Sure, we'll sell this stuff." And so I hired a young guy, just graduated from the American Studies program at Winterthur, and turned him loose on that. And, away we went there.
So you were now doing decorative art.
Decorative arts. And then at the same time, we were selling an awful lot of stuff for the Western Reserve Historical Society in Cleveland. They were going through a major deaccessioning period. And as every institution does that is of any age, they have stuff that doesn't really relate to their core mission.
It's not.
Deaccessioning is not a dirty word. It's a healthy word. Right. So they were selling all kinds of stuff. And I remember I was up there one day picking some material up, and their director said, "We're selling our American Indian art collection." I said, "I didn't know you had one." He said, "Well, yeah, it's in about 5 closets in the building here, and we're going to send it to Christie's." And I said, "Why would you do something foolish like that? I have a PhD in anthropology."
Right.
I was head of the
I'm here.
I was head of the anthropology department at the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History. I can do this.
Yeah.
So he said, "Well, yeah, let's take a look." So I made a proposal, and boom, we sold this collection of American Indian art. And I don't know if you remember it or not. It was like, as you well know, they're really the American Indian art business was on the West Coast and the East Coast, at least for auctions.
Yes, for sure.
And
except for Old Barn.
So I had this auction of this Western Reserve Historical Society material, and it was some pretty great stuff.
What year was that?
Oh God, it was. Let's say it was 2001, 2000, something like that. So this was before I had my own building, and I would rent a hall to have the auction in. Right. Printed a catalog, sent it all over the place, advertised it. And I remember going to the parking lot for the preview and seeing all these trucks from like New Mexico, and Colorado, and Arizona. And walked in and, heard all these guys that were dealers from everywhere. Yeah. And they were all saying to the other dealers, "Who's this What guy? Are you doing here?" Yeah. Not me. What are you doing to the other dealer? I thought everybody thought they were to sneak up on all this stuff.
I remember that.
It was a real bloodbath. And there were there were people still talking about the prices that were paid for that.
Yeah.
So it was like a $900,000 sale, my first sale out the get-go.
I think I remember thinking about going, actually. And I talked to a few dealers, and they were all going. I thought, no, why?
There were Zuni pots that sell for $2,500 now that were selling for $20,000 at that sale. Yeah. So after the sale, a couple of the dealers from the Midwest came up to me. Dick Port, I'm sure you know him. Of course. Dick came up and he said, "There's nobody out here doing this. You just hit a home run. Why don't you do the American Indian? Why don't you start selling American Indian art in the Midwest?" And I said, "Why not?" Yeah. So I hired another person, a recent anthro grad, Danica Farnand, who's with us still today. Yeah. So my business was growing organically for about 10 years. Yes. 25, 30% per year. And that's what happened. That's a
lot, actually, when you think of that's a big growth.
It was a lot. It was
so
big.
How many people work at Cowan's?
Today, there are almost 50.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot of people.
And is a good percent of that specialists in different little fields? Yeah,
we have specialty departments in American Indian art, of course, American Indian and tribal art, fine and decorative arts, jewelry and timepieces, what we call historical Americana or American history, antique and modern firearms. And then, we sell contemporary ceramics and, anything we can sell that we can make money from.
How about houses, real estate? Have you done that?
No, we don't. And that's one regret that I have. I should have gone into the real estate business.
Not too late. Never too late. You've changed before. It's about another time to be.
Yeah. Well, Career 3.0 is just around the corner, right?
So how have you seen your business, which I think has been affected more than the gallery business, change from when you first opened your auction house to now? Because there's some big major technologies. You've done a lot of things that relate to that with Bidsquare and all that.
Well, yeah.
We've watched it evolve.
Sure. Well, as you know, when I first started, there was no such thing as the internet. And I can remember, when it started taking off and saw this company called eBay come out. I said, eBay? Nobody's going to. Why would I pay $7 a share for that? Nobody's going to do this.
I bought it.
Yeah, so of course you did.
I thought I go, this is something I can understand.
Yeah,
this will be good for my business. I can see this working.
Yeah. So, but it very quickly it became apparent that the internet was going to be a huge disruptor in our business.
Yes.
And I was quick to understand that. We had a website before Christie's and Sotheby's did.
Yeah, what year did your website
go?
God,
it would have been the early 90s.
Yeah.
My first live auction, broadcast live over the internet auction was with Amazon. Yeah. Amazon did it for about 2 years, and then they said, "Nah, we're going to get out of this."
And when was that?
But about a couple years, early 90s.
Yeah.
And embraced that. We embraced the technology pretty quickly. And that proved to be prescient, but everybody then jumped on the bandwagon. And today we have a very strong presence on the net, and we use our internet tools very effectively to market our sales and take bids and allow people to bid. And it's been a great thing for us.
And also to get material.
Sure. Yeah. So it's certainly been a huge disruptive fashion and or a huge disruptor in the auction business.
Yeah, I think so too.
When you think about it, when I first started, there were a number of trade publications, and that some of them are still around. Others are gone. Others are just hollow shells of what they were.
Antiques.
But if you wanted to find out about an auction, you better subscribe to one of these weekly or monthly magazines.
Things like that.
And now with the internet, you can look up an auction. It's at the tip of your fingers.
Yeah, so, and the records for that.
And the records are there, and it's made it much easier for buyers to connect with auctioneers.
Mm-hmm.
And probably today, when we have a major sale, by the time you add the internet, telephone, and absentee bidders, probably 70% of everything we sells to somebody who's never physically been in our sales room.
I would have thought it would have even been higher, honestly.
Well, for some it is.
Yeah.
But that's 70% of the lots. For some of the sales, by dollar volume, it's 80 or 90%.
Right. Yeah. And so what's that like? Because you had this huge building you bought. The first time you had this Indian auction in 2001, the entire parking lot is completely filled. Now what does it look like?
Well, the problem is butts in the seat, as we say.
Yeah, because there's nobody, right?
Nobody
comes. Online.
I mean, we have when we have our American history sales, literally, I'm not joking, we'll sell $1 million worth of product, and there'll be 4 people in the sales room.
Yeah. At what point?
So as an auctioneer, it's not much fun. You're just looking at the telephone bank or the computers.
Yeah.
So at what point do you say no more? I think everyone is coming to that. But I think that there is still a need for the printed catalog, not necessarily for the buyers, although some buyers, particularly elderly buyers, they still want to have the catalog. Mm-hmm. But we use it as a marketing tool for the seller, for the people that are selling.
Yeah.
Here's what we can do for you.
Yeah.
I think that will change. I think it's going to be. I think the last dogs will die very slowly in the printed catalog business. So.
And how about VR? Have you guys embraced that all for virtual reality yet?
No.
Yeah, that's coming too.
Well, and
that's like your stereotype thing for your
and really, I felt like when I was in the beginning of my career that I really was embracing all of this technology and really keeping up with it. And now the pace of change is so great. I feel like that I'm falling behind. I really do. And, need to invest in that part of the business. Invest in people who know more than me.
Yes.
And just turn them loose.
Yeah, do their job. And you do, and you came up with a Bidsquare. Maybe you want to tell people about that, because that's a pretty impressive site.
Bidsquare has been, Bidsquare was born, which for those people who are listening, Bidsquare is, there are a number of online auction house aggregators. In other words, platforms where an auction house can list their catalog, make it available for people to view and to leave a bid or to bid live.
Right.
So Bidsquare was born out of the belief that the aggregators that were present, that the two major aggregators, were allowing too much lower valued material to be put on their platform, and also were not policing the things that they were selling. So
fakes and frauds and things.
Yeah, and I felt like, personally, that my brand was potentially going to be tarnished by being associated with these other platforms. So 6 auction houses got together, and I was one of the instigators for this. I'll be happy to admit that. And said, let's all form our own live bidding platform, and we'll make it available for like-minded auction houses, and we'll maybe make sure that everything is vetted and that it's honest and clean, and that our customers are dealing with real live nuts or bricks and mortars auction houses. Right. So it's been pretty good. I think it's been more challenging than any of us anticipated. We were undercapitalized.
Yeah. Because the technology is so expensive to do.
Technology is expensive.
Yeah.
And we didn't have first mover advantage because there were 2 other platforms that did. And we're still playing third fiddle there.
Yeah.
But it's
first to market's always hard to beat first to market sometimes.
Yeah, and let's face it, the market is continuing to change. We live in a world in the auction business where we are trying to squeeze a dollar out of merchandise, where most of the merchandise we sell is not worth what it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
What areas is that not true?
None.
Even contemporary art, you think?
Well, contemporary art, though, I think is it's always been a frothy market. It's always been a very speculative market. It's nothing that I really ever got into. I wasn't really in the area where I could be in. Let's face it, Cincinnati, Ohio is not the headquarters for contemporary art. No. If you want to be in contemporary art, you're going to be either in New York or LA.
Yeah, or Chicago.
Yeah. So, I think
modernist furniture, that seems to still.
Although Cincinnati was not a good place for modernist furniture, because it was Cincinnati was settled in the 1840s by a wave of German immigrants who were very conservative, and that conservatism is still there today.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that you're getting for consignment still coming from your surrounding area.
Well, I think in fine and decorative arts, yes. Yeah. Okay. Although we're seeing more and more from all over the United States.
I know I'm still paying a lot for my George Nakashima furniture.
Yeah, of course. But I think I tell everyone today that the top 10 to 15% of everything we sell, of any collecting category, is still very strong. Yeah, there's still people there's still enough people that outstrip the supply. The demand outstrips the supply.
The best is always
the best is always the best. But that's where you're really, auction houses are just killing each other to compete to get the best product. And so you don't make nearly as much as you used to.
Right.
And the thing that I've discovered as I look back over my catalogs from 10, 15 years ago, I'm like marvel at where did all this stuff come from and where did it go? Because I'm not getting it today. So it's either still in collections or it's been moved around to another collection. But it's all going to come on the market sooner or later. I think that we've got 10 years of the baby boomer stuff to be coughed up.
Yeah. And do you find like early American furniture probably as weak as any area
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, particularly, brown is down. Brown furniture is down.
Right.
Although we've tried to turn that around and say we're down with brown. That we like brown furniture. But that said, last October, two years ago, we sold a Kentucky Secretary bookcase for $500,000.
Yeah.
But it was if you wanted one, this was the only one you're going to get.
Right. So if you
want
the
best
one,
of the best,
yes, the best of the best. And is there any areas that you don't deal in? Do you deal in rare books? I know you deal in historic things, but do you deal in rare books at all?
Well, yes and no. We used to deal in rare books. When I first started in business, I had a number of book sales and did very well with them.
Mm-hmm.
But then here comes the internet, and Amazon landed in that area with both feet. And there was a publication called Antiquarian Bookman's Weekly.
Mm-hmm.
It was in business for over 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were having a book auction, this is the place you would advertise your books. And everybody that was interested in books, they would get this thick newspaper every week of auctions, and there were dealers listing their books, and you could say, this is the book I was looking for. So it was the indispensable tool of the trade. We'd had several book auctions, and I remember I was gearing up for another one, and I wanted to call ABE to our Antiquarian Bookman's Weekly, to book a ad, and I called, the number had been disconnected.
Just disconnected.
I said, holy crap. And so I called one of my book dealer friends, and they said, yeah, the internet put them out of business like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like instantly. So the internet turned more than any collectible area, the book business, antiquarian book business, on its head.
Yeah, I think so too. And all of a sudden you realize some books aren't as rare as you thought.
Well, the joke I like to say is that all these bookmen really thought that only one copy of this book was ever published. And then when they found out that they could go on
Transparency,
ABE or whatever, and they say, oh, well, there were 50 of these available right now.
Yeah. Transparency is a bitch when you can find out.
So, a book that was worth $400 15 years ago is worth $75 now.
Yeah. And so you said no more for the books unless it's something super rare and special.
Yeah.
And then you'll put it into your historical link.
Yeah.
And do you think eBay is affecting your business at all?
I worried about it. Yeah. I worried about it when it first really started ramping up. And I do think that it did affect my business for a while. But I think what undid eBay, at least with my customers, was the transparency and honesty that I had with my business. People trusted me.
Yeah.
Do I wish I had all of eBay's customers?
Sure.
You bet.
How about something like Everything But the House?
Well, Everything But the House has a unique business model, and it's a business model that, as far as I can see, it depends on volume.
Yes.
You have to sell volume. You have to sell a lot of stuff.
Huge volume, right? I don't know how they do these little things they sell.
Well,
and make it work.
They're very smart. Their new CEO is a great guy, and I like him a lot.
Yeah.
We were friendly. A couple of my employees went to work for EBTH. But I think that the jury's still out on EBTH because I think they're discovering that, A, they need a pipeline of quality product.
Right.
And B, you can't make money selling $100 items.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know how.
And I'm not talking out of school. If anybody from EBTH ever listens to this,
they will.
I'm just saying you guys are great. I think you're doing great, but you recognize the same problem that I do.
Yeah. Because there's a point where you lose money.
Exactly.
And you can't afford to do all that's required to get on the web.
And they've pulled in their horns quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, they've closed a number of their regional offices, laid off about half their employees, and they're reevaluating their business model and I think coming up with a more sensible model for their business.
Yeah. And where do you see the auction world going for people like you? Consolidation?
Well, as you know, there has been consolidation. I mean, I'm part of the consolidation that just occurred. I think that, yes, I think that there is an opportunity to consolidate a part of the market. When you look at my business, I'm 67. Many of the more successful middle market businesses, and by middle market I mean $15 to $50 million in annual sales, were founded and run today by people like me that don't necessarily have a succession plan and who have got to be doing something.
Right.
And all of these, all my colleagues who are in the business, I'm sure, are just like me. You've built a group of dedicated people working for you that you are responsible for paying their mortgages and child support or child support, child care and support sometimes. But I have a great deal of loyalty that my employees have for me, and I in turn feel very loyal to them and very want to do something for them.
Yeah, their family. Yeah.
So. In my case, and I don't know if you want to talk about this now or not,
sure,
but in my case, Leslie Heineman and I have known each other for 10 years, got to know each other really well through Bidsquare for several years, talked on the phone every day, just yak. And Leslie was clearly had this sort of roll-up of the middle market on her mind, but it got to the point where she just said, you know what, I don't have the energy to do it. Was approached by an investor in Chicago who she'd known for many years. And he said, well, don't sell your company to this other people, sell them to me. So he bought the company, and then last July called me and said, hey, it makes sense for me to buy you too.
Yeah, no, it does.
So the new company is called Heineman, and the company owns Leslie Heineman Auctioneers and Cowan's Auctions, and combining the two brings together about 150 employees now. And last year combined sales were $67 million. We have offices in 10 different cities in the United States.
Makes sense.
So it made a lot of sense. I mean, we both said we're regional powerhouses, Leslie and myself.
That's true. I've always considered that.
And now we really are. And it made a lot of sense for the new company to buy me because we were, I think we're recognized as a leader in the sale of American Indian art.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leslie was starting to do that, but we had a big head start on them. They didn't sell antique and modern firearms, and they certainly didn't sell historical Americana. So,
that's right.
But by the same token, they have a much bigger footprint in fine and decorative arts than we did. So it's a good match.
Yeah, it's a good match.
And they're good Midwestern people. We get along. We share the same values. I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
where this company goes now, it's really not up to me.
Yeah.
It was an asset sale, and for those of you who don't know what an asset sale is, it means I don't own a single thing. They bought everything from me, and the Cowan's brand will continue. They're very, they're going to be very cautious about submerging that brand under a new one.
Yeah, I think they should be. It's a good brand. I've always associated it with high ethics and quality.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's the message that I've gotten from every one of my customers. Boy, you're not going away, are you? You guys, we just trust you so much. And,
right. Right. Yeah, I've used you many, many times, especially when I need information on things I don't understand, which there's a lot.
Well, there's not that much.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. One last thing I really want to talk to you, because probably everybody really wants to know about it. Tell us about being a TV star for like the detective show.
Look,
how in the world did that happen? How did you get the show?
First place, I want to disabuse you of the notion that I'm any such thing as a TV star.
I don't know. Do they have an IMDb thing?
Yeah, but you know what? I always tell people when they say, "Oh, you're a TV star," I'd say, "Look, if I was a real star, my bodyguard would be here right now, and you wouldn't be this close to me."
I am sure people have asked for your signature along the way.
But not as much as they used to.
Yeah.
But I've been very fortunate to be involved with two great shows: the Antiques Roadshow for 20-something years, now 23 years, I guess.
That's a long time.
And History Detectives, which was another show on PBS for 11 years. Antiques Roadshow was sort of a fluke. Not entirely a fluke, but about the second year that it was on, there was an article in the Cincinnati Enquirer, the Cincinnati newspaper, said, this new show, Antiques Roadshow, is coming to Cincinnati, the convention center. And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. So I called up the producer, called up WGBH in Boston and said, hey, can I speak to the producer of the Antiques Roadshow? Right. Sure, not a problem. Got on the phone and said, look, I can appraise books and photography and manuscripts and blah, blah, blah. You need any help? And they said, sure, come on down to the convention center. We'll give you a badge and, we'll put you at the books and manuscript table. Yeah. This was the second year when there were 400 people coming to the Antiques Roadshow. Right. So I got taped a couple times. And in January of every year, as the new season is beginning, WGBH sends out an email to all the appraisers and saying, these are the cities that we're going to this year. And do you want to go? So in the January following the second season, the beginning of the third season, I got this email and said, oh, great, I'll do some more. And that morphed into this 23-year run of doing that. And of course, by about the fifth season of the Roadshow, it had become this cultural phenomenon where you'd have 5,000 people who show up every day. And, all the people many of the people were becoming household names. And
that's a killer. To have that many people show up that you have to. Yeah,
we appraise. Yeah. We have to get on the set at 7:30 in the morning. We typically leave about 8 o'clock at night. So it's a 12 or 13 hour day.
And how many days will you do that for?
Only one day. Yeah. All Saturday. God. We generally will appraise about 25,000 objects on that day. Between about 75 appraisers.
I don't care.
But it was very good for me because I started off doing photography, did photography for many years, but I've done, decorative arts and did firearms for some, and I did a lot of different ones. I prints, and for the past 8 or so years I've been doing folk art, and basically I like to do that because I learned something different. Yeah. So that's been it was just a fluke that I called. It wasn't a fluke. I showed some initiative, but after that, by the fourth or fifth year, every appraiser and auctioneer in the country wanted to be on the show. Sure. And WGBH has been very loyal to the people who've been there from the beginning.
Because you're not getting paid for
We get paid nothing. We pay our own way.
And how many cities do you have to go to usually?
Well, it's not dwindling down, but they've cut back as PBS's budget has been cut back. About the sixth or seventh year, we were doing 8 cities, which was just grueling. Yeah, you had no summer. Yeah. You had no summer. Yeah. Now they do 4 or 5, and this year I think I'm going to do 3 cities. Yeah. I'll be in Phoenix, San Antonio, and I'll be in Winterthur, Delaware. Yeah. So those are the only ones that I wanted to do this year.
And what's the greatest thing you've come through your hands that
you've
seen?
God, everybody asks me that, Mark. And, good. I honestly, I can say that there are very few things that I just really remember. It's like at the end of the season, I'm so burned out, I don't even remember what I looked at. One of the great things that I really enjoyed seeing was in about, maybe the 4th or 5th year, we were in Denver, and a guy walks up to my table. I was at photography, and I guess had been sent this guy over from some other table, but he sits this box down in front of me, and it's a marquetry inlaid box, this beautiful piece of marquetry. And I said, "Where'd you get this?" And he said, "Well, I'm a preacher from Colorado Springs, and I'm a Lincoln. I love Abraham Lincoln, and one of my congregants gave me this box." I said, "Oh, what is it?" And he said, "Well, open it up." So I opened it up, opened the lid up, and on the inside of the lid is a pressed piece of paper that has a pressed wreath of seaweed on it, bright pink, and then a manuscript inscription in the sort of horseshoe-shaped wreath saying that this box was made by Dr. Samuel Mudd while imprisoned in the Dry Tortugas at Port Jefferson and presented to Sergeant so-and-so, his guard. Well, Samuel Mudd was the guy who set John Wilkes Booth's leg, and he was put in prison there. Yeah. So this was made from driftwood at the Dry Tortugas. And it was a spectacular thing. And I ultimately ended up selling it for the guy for a lot of money.
Well, the history, I think, probably turns you on as much
Oh,
as anything.
yeah.
I mean, that's
well,
an important part of history.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that has been so enjoyable about my career is that I have been exposed to all these different aspects of material culture and its historical significance. And because of my academic background, I have known how to do, pull the thread, as I say, and try to find out the story about it.
Yeah,
and
the actual story.
One of the things that I have discovered through History Detectives, and we'll get to that in a minute, but and through the Antiques Roadshow, is that everybody has a story. Americans love history, but it's a history it's their history that revolves around their family primarily. And I make a distinction between the history that we learn in our high school and college courses, which I refer to as history with a big H, where, the Pilgrims landed and, over the course of the next 6 weeks, you go up to the Civil War. But I distinguish that between the histories that each one of us keep alive in our family through artifacts or whatever that's been passed down to us, that it's very personal. And it's history with what I call history with a little h. And history with a little h is your family's relationship to history with a big H. So maybe you've got a sword that was a cavalry saber that was used by your great-great-grandfather when he was in the 17th Ohio Cavalry.
Right.
But you've had it passed down, and you know that he used that in the Civil War, and that's your entryway into the Civil War.
I.e. the History Detectives. That's it.
Yeah.
It's little h meets big H and what's in between.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a great concept. Who came up with that? That's really a great concept.
I think I'd like to say I came up with it, and that's something that I'm Careers 3.0. That's what I want to run with.
Yeah. And did you come up with that?
Yeah, I think I did.
For the show?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, no, not for History Detectives. No. History Detectives was totally different. History Detectives was History Detectives was the brainchild of Lion Television, which is a London producer. They produced a lot of shows for the BBC. They wanted to open an office in the United States, and they came up with this concept of finding objects that people own that they don't really know if the story's true about them. They've got one of these family stories, but they want to find out if it's really true. And so they teamed up with Oregon Public Broadcasting as the funnel for funds from PBS and started the show here. And
it did 11 seasons?
11 seasons, 110 shows, something like that. Yeah. And I was fortunate to be tapped for that, and it was just one of these fluky things. They were looking for people, saw me on the Antiques Roadshow, called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to maybe be a presenter," which is what the English call these, a host of this new show? And I said, "Yeah, what's the show?" And they said, "Well, we're tentatively calling it America's Attic."
Yeah.
And they said they discovered pretty quickly that people were here in America were not hearing America's attic. They were hearing America's addict. And so they changed it to History Detectives.
A lot of people don't even know what an attic is. We don't have them out here in the Southwest.
So they changed it to History Detectives. And
smart.
And that was a great run for me. And
that's done.
It's done. It's been off the air for 5 years.
And so Fox has kind of taken over that mantle with their...
Well, what happened was I think a lot of, the History Channel, started ripping off. You going to edit this at all?
No editing.
So History Channel didn't really rip it off. The History Channel discovered that this was a pretty good gig that people are interested in. So you got American Pickers, you got Pawn Stars, you have Storage Locker Wars, all these shows. In some way or another owe their debt to
for sure.
History Detectives, because we were taking objects, explicating what the objects meant in a bigger sense in American history, and then tying it back to the individuals that owned them.
Yeah. It's a fact. Is it still on? I don't know.
Well, you can see it. I'm sure it's on rerun somewhere, and you can see every episode online.
I actually loved watching it.
Yeah. Well, I got lots of people told me that they love to watch it with their families. Of course, we were the heroes of all these junior high school and history.
I bet, right?
Junior high school and high school history teachers. Librarians loved us, because we were always in libraries and archives. And it was a great show. And it really, that more than anything is what helped me conceptualize this history with a little h versus a big H. Because I was going and seeing people all over the country who had these stories, who had these fascinating stories, that allowed me to understand why they were fascinating. And I got to meet all these incredibly smart people, scholars who could talk about these things. And, it was a very, very influential decade for me.
Yeah,
being around all these people.
And I can see, history, your family history is what shapes you. It's what shapes your idea of who you are, where you came from, and where you're going. And I think you're allowed into that world with these people, which gives you an intimate,
exactly,
sense that you couldn't get.
And it's the object or objects that they preserved.
Yes.
That allowed you to really explicate that. And if you go anywhere and give a talk and you just say, how many people, ask the question right when you start, how many people in this room have something in their house that was handed down to them by an ancestor that you have today? You'll see that most people raise their hand.
Yeah.
And I'll say, you didn't realize that you were a curator. You're curating your family history.
Yeah, the next question I'd like to say to them is, and how many know what you really have?
Yeah, right. Well, that's
many don't.
That's actually not the next question. The next question is, and how many have children who don't want any of it? They don't want to have to do with any of it.
Yeah, though that may turn around at some point when we get to, I think every generation has their things and what they're about. Clearly, millennials are less object-driven and more experience-driven. But we don't know where that's going to happen.
I think that's true. I do feel like we're probably going to enter about a 10 or 15 year drought. Everything that we think of as an antique or collectible, by and large, not everything, but the hobby, antique collecting and collectible hobby, is a post-World War II phenomenon. I mean, there were people collecting antiques and early American furniture in the late 19th century and the early 20th century.
And fossils in the 1700s.
And fossils and everything. But largely it's a 20th century, mid-20th century phenomenon, and was really every market, I don't care what it is, collectible or antique, really experienced a run-up in the 90s, late 90s and early 2000s, when the baby boomer generation hit their peak earning periods.
Yeah, that's true.
And competition to buy stuff coincided with peak interest in the stuff.
Yes.
And now we're into a period where the baby boomers are retiring. They built these collections, and now they're dispersing these collections, and there's no one around to buy the stuff at the prices that they were paying for them, which is why we're seeing falling prices. And B, there's not a lot of interest.
Yeah.
So I do think...
the millennials are just now starting to buy their homes, and as you start to build your homes and your family, I think there may be a pushback, and you'll see some more interest in, I grew up with this. This was in my house.
I think we'll see that first.
Now I have a house.
I think we'll see that first with the millennials. The millennials are they're the ones with the disposable income now. They are the ones that should be buying now. Many of the millennials are starting to get on the cusp of their 50s. Mm-hmm. And they should, if they're going to discover this stuff, now is the time to do it. The millennials have got another 20 years.
Yeah, no, it's true. Whether we do or not,
whether they will be interested in this stuff or not, I don't know. I mean, I hope that they are. I feel very firmly, after, having been around wonderful things for the last 25 years, that these objects have a real capacity to change one's life. Mm-hmm. And, a good piece of art doesn't have to be a great piece of art.
Mm-hmm. Just has to be a meaningful piece of art.
Art has the capacity to just bring so much more to your life. Mm-hmm. And So I think to your point, as the millennials buy their first home, they get married, and of course, kids are getting married later. They're delaying families longer and longer. As kids buy their first home, have a family, and they start looking around, and they're saying, man, these portable devices that I have there, there's only so much enjoyment that I can get out of them, that hopefully they'll discover these wonderful things, which are right now, I stand up on the auction block every time I have a sale and say, I can't believe how cheap these things are selling for.
Well, the other thing you have is the world. And that's one thing I think that we disavow somewhat. And the world is opening up to America as far as to the internet and buying, especially for the West, because there is only one West. And if you're talking about China, Japan, and all these places that have real interest in the West, as they become more sophisticated and buying becomes easier, and we market to those people, I think we'll see changes there. We have already seen that with the Japanese and what they're doing with Native American jewelry. They're very interested in it, and they come over to our gallery and buy, every year.
Yeah.
So who knows? I don't know what the answer is. I agree with what you're saying, but I think there's maybe more hope on the horizon for interest in older material of all sorts, but it may come from not within the United States. It may come from other areas.
I think that one of the questions I get asked all the time is, what would you collect if you could? Somebody gave you $1 million. What would you be collecting
we'd probably
now?
say the same thing. We'd probably say what you like.
No, I'd say if I had a crystal ball, I'd have about 100,000 square foot warehouse right now. Then I would be filling it up right now. But I don't have any clue what anybody's going to be collecting. Although it's interesting. I've been trying to stress to my employees, guys, what are you going to be selling in 10 years? You need to be thinking about this right now.
Yes, true.
What are you going to be thinking about? What are you going to be selling? And one of the things that I've been harping about, and they all laugh, is video games, early computers, Hot Wheels.
Mario Brothers just brought $100,000.
$100,000 for an unopened pack.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's still interest.
Yeah.
It just the ball may be moving a little bit.
Exactly.
Well, I think we covered a lot, Wes. Is there anything else you want to mention or say before we go?
No, I think it's great to be here, of course, and always admired and respected your business. And if I had half the energy that you did, I'd probably own the world by now.
You clearly do. Wes Cowan, it's a pleasure.
My pleasure.
I really enjoy getting to hear the backstory, and let's go have a drink. What do you say?
All right, great.
Even if it's just a Coke. All right, thanks. Wes Cowan. Gallery, located for over 26 years in Tucson, Arizona, specializing in antique Native American art, early Western art, including the famed Maynard Dixon, as well as modern art. You can find everything online at medicinemangallery.com. There's over 6,000 objects to select from. Also, the Charles Bloom Murder Mystery Series, written by yours truly, me, Mark Sublette. There's 6 books in this series, and they follow the protagonist Charles Bloom through all the intrigue of the art world set in Santa Fe and the Navajo Nation. These can be found on Audible, ebooks, Amazon, and of course, the gallery at medicinemangallery.com.